Now that you've successfully learned how to play the C major scale and recall its shapes across the fingerboard, I'm confident in saying that you can now go ahead and play any of the major scales on the bass. Okay, you might not feel capable of this at present, but listen on and I might just change your mind.
One great thing about the bass guitar is the fact that the instrument is tuned symmetrically. This means that the interval or distance between the pitches of our open strings is always the same. From our low E to the A is the interval of a fourth. The A to a D is also a fourth, and so on. More about intervals later, but for now, what does this mean? And more importantly, how can we make use of it? Well, here's our C major scale again, and if you've been practicing, you'll be able to think of this scale creating a certain shape or pattern across the fingerboard. Now, we call it a C major scale because the root or first note of the scale is a C, so no surprises there. But if you wanted to play a D major scale, for example, all you'd have to do is recall the shape of the major scale and just start it on a D like this. A G major scale really is that easy too, and works because of the symmetrical tuning of the instrument. All I'm doing is remembering the shape of the scale and starting it from the required root note. You may have had your doubts, but believe me, you can now effectively play every single major scale.
Now, unfortunately, just being able to recall the shape of a major scale alone isn't quite enough. In order to develop ourselves as musicians, we need to work towards knowing the notes contained within these other major scales. So, how many other major scales are there?
In total, there are 12 individual major scales. And this fact alone should come as no surprise. And here's why. If you remember back to when we were learning about the notes on the fingerboard, we discovered that there were 12 semitone intervals contained within one octave. For example, if our open A string is the first of these intervals, continuing on we'd have the second semitone, A sharp or B flat, third, B, the fourth, C, fifth, C sharp or D flat, the sixth semitone is a D, seventh is a D sharp or E flat, eighth an E, ninth, F, the 10th semitone is F sharp or G flat, the 11th is a G, and the 12th semitone is a G sharp or A flat. And going on up another semitone lands us back on an A, but this time up an octave. Okay, what's important is that we can take any of these 12 notes and use them as a root note to begin a major scale from. So now you know that it's these 12 individual root notes that give us the 12 major scales.
Hopefully by now the note names that make up a C major scale should be more familiar to you, and this is proof that you're developing and becoming ever more comfortable with this scale. Really though, you should strive to achieve the same level of confidence with any of the other major scales, in terms of knowing the notes that are used to construct them. So, let's start working towards this and briefly take a look at some of these other major scales.
I know you can already play this, but let's just take a look at the notes that together make up the E major scale. Now, just a quick word of warning when using our movable shape to play new major scales. Both shapes we've learned to play the major scale need 3 strings worth of space across the fingerboard to allow us to play up and down a complete scale. See, there I've just played notes on the E, A and D strings. When you decide on picking a new root note to start another major scale from, make sure you choose a root note from either the E string or the A string. That way you'll have the space available to complete the scale up and down. Hopefully you can see that if I were to start the shape from a note anywhere on the D string like this, I'd simply run out of strings and only be able to play up to the 5th note of the major scale. So, continuing on, here's an E on the 7th fret of the A string, and this is our root note. Playing up through the shape of the major scale from the E, together let's work out the note names of the frets we're playing. The 2nd note is an F sharp or G flat, the 3rd note is a G sharp or A flat, the 4th is an A, the 5th note is a B, the 6th note is a C sharp or D flat, onto the 7th note is a D sharp or E flat, and then we're back at the octave E. From this, it's interesting to see that now we've got a major scale that contains either sharp or flat notes. But even so, the sound created by the scale is still distinctly recognisable as the major scale. Remember, it's the order of notes, and more importantly, the intervals between those individual notes that dictate the sound or character of any scale. Hopefully, you notice that I referred to the unnatural notes using both their sharp and flat names. These unnatural notes are also known in music as accidentals. And remember that the 2nd note of F sharp, for example, is exactly the same note as a G flat. Okay, what I'd like you to do in your own practice is work towards figuring out the note names contained within the other remaining major scales. Before you start, I recommend writing out a list of the 12 semitones contained in an octave, and then using those notes as root notes to begin the other major scales from. As you do this, try to use both major scale shapes during the exercise. Also, as you play up through the scales, say the note names out loud, and refer to any accidentals as both their sharp and flat equivalents. This in-depth approach serves as a great way of unlocking note positions across the entire fingerboard, and is another exercise that will help you develop into a well-rounded musician. Until next time, just keep practicing.